Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. It's been a super busy week here at Boddy's Farm HQ. I've been busy mixing up rations for these guys. I've been doing contract drilling out till late for a few nights, and now we've had time for a little bit of a breather. But I thought I'd do a video this week about how we feed these guys and get them big and get them fat and get them onto your plates. So if you're a farmer, you might learn a couple of things, and if you're a consumer, you'll get a bit of an insight into what goes on. Let's get to it. Now, the reason why I wanted to do this video in particular is because I have just weaned some of the young stock off the calves. These are springborn calves from this year, and I've also got some springborn calves from last year, some heifers up in the top yard that if you follow me on Instagram or whatever else, you might have seen those guys, or in some of the previous videos when I've been talking about cattle rations. And I've got essentially a wide range of animals and ages on the farm, so you can see exactly what we do and how we get them there. These guys were weaned last week, and we've brought them in, we've weighed them, which is one of the first jobs that we'll do. So essentially weaning is when you take them off of the cow, off of their mothers. They're not dependent on the cows anymore, so they can come in. We've put the cows back out to grass. These guys have been weighed, the cows have been weighed, and what we try to do is we try to get an animal at weaning that's 50% or more of the mother's weight. These guys averaged out at 56%. The best one was 65%, and the worst one was 19%. And why that is interesting is actually because the worst ratio at 19% was the biggest cow that we weighed. And why I think that's interesting personally is because I'm a big fan of small cows, because I think that small cows are more profitable. Big cows eat a lot of food and you need bigger calves from them, and so on and so forth, whereas smaller cows, you can have more of them, they have less food, and obviously their cattle grow to a better weaning ratio. So when we are looking at what we feed cattle when they come in, essentially what we're trying to do is we're trying to grow them. So we have two types of rations. These guys behind me are going to go on a growing ration, and the cattle up in the top yard, which you'll see later on in the video, they're on a finishing ration. The difference is that the growing ration is a higher protein ration, and essentially it's there to grow the cattle bigger and put more frame on, and then at which point you will put them, when they get to a certain size, onto the finishing ration, and you will put all the meat on that frame. The reason why they don't go on the finishing ration to start off with is because that is essentially a lower protein ration that is higher in starch and so on and so forth. And what will happen is if you put these guys on it, they'll get fat and not get big, whereas these guys need a higher protein ration and they will get bigger, stronger, more of a bone, more frame on them. And then when they get to sort of 450, 480 kilos, we'll transfer them off of that ration onto the other one and finish them off. Now, a little bit of a disclaimer. In order to get these cattle that we want to grow properly, a lot of work has to go into the suckle cow, their mothers, in order to create healthy calves. But I'm not going to get too much into that because that's probably enough for another video. But essentially, we have a really high health status on this farm, which means that we have healthy calves. If you didn't have healthy calves, they're not going to grow as well. So that is something to keep in mind. Those of you who are paying attention will have heard that I spoke about weighing these animals when they come in. Now, part of that is to gauge the performance of the suckle cow, but the other part of it is to understand how much we need to feed these guys. As a general rule of thumb, we use the 2% rule. Now, the 2% rule is that you feed 2% of the animal's body weight in food every day. So, and that's fresh weight food. So if you get really technical, you can talk about dry matter and whatever else, but this is fresh weight food. So as a rule, say for argument's sake that these guys weigh 250 kilos, we then feed them 5 kilograms of food a day. And our way of feeding them is that we feed them 2.5 kilos of silage, like this, really good quality, nice silage. And the other 2.5 kilograms is a cereal ration, which I'll show you in a minute. Now, another good reason for using the 2% rule is that it is the same throughout the animal's whole life. So as the animal grows and you weigh it, and we weigh it very often, you can then tweak the ration to ensure that they get exactly what they need. So if they grow up to 300 kilograms, you can give them 3 kilos of one and 3 kilos of the other. If they get to 400, it's 4 kilos of one, 4 kilos of the other, so on and so forth. And it stays pretty much stable throughout their whole life. And as a general rule of thumb, it is pretty accurate. Just so that you can see, this is the ration that we feed to the growing stock. So in here we have rolled barley, rolled oats, rolled beans, and we have this stuff, which is which is a Champion 35 Rumatech concentrate nuts that we get from Harborough. And this is mineralized. It has alk acid in it, which helps the rumen. It helps reduce the methane produced by the cattle. It's carbon trust assured, and essentially it improves their performance and growth. And we mix all that up on farm, and also just has a touch of molasses in it, which just dampens down the dust. So it makes it a little bit easier for them to eat. Just in comparison, this is what we feed to the finishing ration. As you can see, it doesn't have the concentrate pellet in it. It is slightly different ratios, but essentially the same stuff. It's still got rolled barley, rolled oats, rolled beans in there. But we also put in an alk acid rumer buff, and we put in some TMR finishing mineral in there as well. And again, molasses just to dampen the dust. Now, as I said, they are relatively similar mixes, but of slightly different ratios. And the reason for that is that as the cattle get older, we want to do a lower protein ratio, as I explained earlier, but also we've lowered things like beans in the growing ration because beans are quite bitter and the animals don't like it. So you have to gauge these things accordingly, and then just go with what works. Now, a couple of other things to consider as well. If you want to improve your growth of your animals, you need to provide them with a really good quality environment. We use the McHale straw shredder to blow straw in as bedding. We buy straw in, and we also have straw from our own arable system to ensure that these guys can be bedded every day, and that creates a nice clean yard for them to lie on, which will help them and that puts them at ease. And the more they're at ease, the less stressed they are, the better they'll grow. And also you want to have a nice clean water source, so clean your water out regularly. All right, I get it. Let's talk numbers. That's what we really want to hear. Well, to be profitable, realistically, we want to be doing 1.5 kilograms of daily live weight gain. What that means is that we want every animal to be growing at around 1.5 kilograms every day. These guys behind me are the finishing heifers. The last time we weighed these guys were doing 2.13 kilograms per day, which is really good. Obviously, the more we get in per day, the more profitable we are. So as long as we're above the 1.5, that's good. But realistically, we want to be doing more. Some of these were doing around 1.8, but the odd one in here was doing around 3 kilograms a day. So that's huge daily live weight gain, really good feed conversion rates, and that's what we're trying to achieve. And they look pretty good. In order to illustrate exactly what I mean by trying to grow our cattle, I've come into the egg packery and I've drew on the whiteboard a little bit of a diagram showing the time on farm and the weight of the animal. The green line sort of represents the profit in the animal. Anything below this green line is kind of eating too much food, spending too much time on the farm, not growing enough. Anything above this green line is showing good profit. So what we're trying to achieve here with this blue line is the growth of the animal. So as it's younger, its feed conversion rate will be higher, and as it gets older, it slows down. So what we're trying to do is grow them as fast as we possibly can, and then get them killed before we get to this point here. In an ideal world, where this red X is where we want to be finishing our animal. If we can finish the animal at this point, we're kind of maximizing the potential of the animal in weight gain and not keeping it on farm too long. Ultimately, staying above the profitability line. Something I should say is this is just a rough graph. It's just giving you a bit of an idea of how it goes. This line here, this green one, could be lower if, for example, you're on an Aberdeen Angus scheme and you're on contract and you're getting a premium price. It's a slower growing animal, and therefore you can afford to keep it on farm longer. If you're using native breeds, for example, and you're grass finishing them, you can do the same thing. You can keep them on farm longer because the cost of production is so much lower. You might have to finish them earlier if you're on a certain contract because of the parameters that are set out by your slaughterhouse. This is just a general guide. It's not set in stone. So what happens on your farm could be completely different to how it works on mine. Right guys, that's it for another video. Now I'm sure I have left you with more questions than I have given you answers. So if you have got a question, stick it in the comments below. It'd be great to hear from you. I'm kind of hoping that if you're a farmer, you've picked up a couple of tips. I'm hoping that if you're a consumer, you've learned a bit more about the beef industry. But yeah, it'd be just great to hear from you. So anything you've got to say, stick it down in the comments below. If you wouldn't mind giving me a like and a subscribe, that would be awesome too. But until next time, have a good one. See ya.